Welcome to Business Reporter's Best of British Business campaign. I'm Rick Kelsey. Many companies would agree that B2B payments are often too complex and too costly. They're also often surrounded by jargon, which can add to that aura of a lack of accountability. Today we're meeting the experts at Monavate who've literally changed the game when it comes to simplifying business-to-business payments. Scott Lucas is the co-founder and president, and Michael Rolfe is the CEO. Michael, Scott, good to see you both. Scott, when did you realise that you could fix the problem of business-to-business payments?
So the problem's existed for as long as I've been in this industry. There's always been a problem from the world of business-to-business payments and how to streamline this remarkably global industry to make payments simpler, even faster, more efficient, but at the same time protecting your own business from the risk of fraud. The payments getting lost in transit because of the legacy banking systems that we have out there. So I think the last 20 years minimum for me, that this has always been a problem.
If you look at the context of history, in an analog world, it's the most complicated because you've got to have a system of trust that enables you to move money from yourself to receiving third party. And of course, when you start to do that across borders as well, you add a lot more complexity and time to that. So as technology has evolved through the mechanisms of trust, you have schemes that were effectively came into life, Visa, MasterCard, American Express. What they simply did was connect the bank networks. So rather than them being the vehicles that enabled the money to move, they were the ones that added the layer of trust between the banks for an inter-party model.
You guys have got international acclaim for cutting out the middleman. How did you do it?
Monavate's journey has been, from day one, a consistent story of consolidating the stack, right? So broadly speaking, in the world of issuing, which is where we've started life, you probably have about 6 or 7 different services that you'd require in order to run a card program. We consolidated all of that onto one single platform, Monavate One. And by doing that, that enables us to bring in a level of automation around reconciliation from different systems that historically, if you are somebody that wanted to issue a card program and you had 6 or 7 different suppliers, you needed to create, more than likely than not, a manual workaround to reconcile all of the movements around the data and the money. From Monavate's perspective, we took the approach that this is not about moving money or a payment per se, it's about moving data.
Talk to me a little bit, Michael, about how you work with the existing payment infrastructures and complement them, as well as have developed this new, simpler, more streamlined style of working.
Yeah. So we are principal members of both Visa, MasterCard and Discover. So that's an important point straight away, which obviously puts us at the heart of being responsible for protecting the networks as principal members. We then work with different third-party processors, the people that are responsible for effectively authorizing a transaction that is relating to a card that has been issued by Monavate, who is the issuer in that instance. But we've also built our own processing platform as well, so we can issue and authorize transactions within our own environment. We have integrated things like the ability to acquire. So if somebody wants to also top up a wallet, for example, then they can do that through Monavate. If they actually want to run a wallet with a separate ledger that is completely walled garden relative to an external banking system, then we can do that on Monavate. That banking system I've just mentioned, you may want to issue an IBAN or virtual IBAN. We can do that through Monavate. Well, there's sort of 6 or 7 different key elements of what it takes to run a program, whether that's card-based or bank-based. That's what we've consolidated into Monavate.
Can we dig down a little bit deeper into, if I'm a business thinking about taking on Monavate, how I can make money, how this becomes a revenue stream?
We've simplified the transactions and the reconciliation, so you no longer need huge backroom teams of people to be able to reconcile this information through the data that we capture. We're using virtual cards and modern technology, so we're able to provide rebates back to customers as opposed to having to continually pay for bank transfers to move global. Now, you don't have to send that by bank transfer that takes 3 days, etc. You can send that using a virtual card number, which is a MasterCard or a Visa, and you can send it straight to your recipient and they can type that into their system and they'll be paid the next day. So on the back of that, we will receive the interchange. So that will come back to the issuer because we're the issuer of the card. We can then share that interchange with that business. So all of a sudden you've gone from maybe paying £25, €25 for that bank transfer to send money to the US. We've all of a sudden created a virtual card that you're going to get revenue back from exactly the same thing. And it's settled quicker, and you've got the protection should something go wrong. It's really difficult to say how much a payment costs because you've got to build that entire ecosystem. We work with customers that probably only 10, 15 years ago ended up having 3 reconciliation centres across the UK and Europe because they had so many fragmented third parties where they were trying to reconcile those pieces. So it's not just the one cost of the payment from A to B, it's the entire ecosystem that you then need to build. But if you can streamline this through one platform that's giving you that reconciliation and it's saying this payment makes more sense to be sent via bank transfer, it's going to cost you this is the FX rate in real time, it's guaranteed and it will get there. Or actually, you can send this via stablecoin, it's going to be there immediately. You can then weigh up the pros and cons of all your businesses. And because we're taking care of the reconciliation on the back end, you know, that one company will no longer need those 3 reconciliation centres to do that.
This is the Best of British campaign. My day job is interviewing leaders both in business and in politics. Why aren't you shouting about this more?
To who?
Why haven't you been shouting about it more?
No. So that's actually a really good question. So let's step back. Monavate is in its 5th year of commercial operation since it founded. We sit in that bucket of, you know, innovative companies that sort of operate in that fintech space, financial technology, which is full of lots of great names that I'm sure our watchers and listeners will be very aware of. Probably what they'll be less aware of is that most of them actually have either no business model or a terrible business model, which is to say that they may raise a lot of money from their investors, but they're burning that faster than they can raise it. And in between, they haven't necessarily quite got product market fit, other than what they think they've got, rather than what they can prove through what does their bottom line look like when it comes to their commercial reality. And a lot of the time they spend, you know, doing this type of thing, you know, telling a story, because, you know, if you talk about it enough, it might become real. And it's part of setting the vision. It's what it takes to be a leader. In Monavate, we decided to take a different approach, which I think that most people that have been entrepreneurs and have gone 2 or 3 or 4 times around before will probably recognize, which is to say, it's better sometimes just to sit down in a room and get on with your knitting, you know, do the job that is to actually deliver your vision, rather than think your job is to talk about your vision. So for the last 4 years, Monavate has been maniacally focused, and I mean maniacally focused, on just building a reality, because it's not easy to actually create that platform that we've described, where you put all of these different services together whilst working with regulators, schemes. You know, as a startup at an early stage where you're talking sub 50 people, you know, you've really got to be on your A game day in, day out to every last one of you. And so that focus necessitates that, you know, we don't really spend time doing this type of thing normally. However, good news is, after year 4 last year, you know, we are a profitable company and our revenue is doubling year on year. Already we know this year that our revenue and our profit will double, and that's if we do nothing on top of what we've already done to date. So, you know, we kind of feel like we've earned a little bit of kudos to say, hey, completely, here's Monavate, this is what we're doing.
You've come this far in 4 years. Where are you going in the next 4?
So if you put that into a geographic context, we started life in the UK, we've expanded into Europe. We're now in the process of getting our licenses in Latin America, the US, and I'd expect us to be covering Asia and Australasia, Middle East, etc. within the next 4 years as well. So, you know, we go from being a UK startup at the beginning to being a global powerhouse at the end.
Is there one example that you are super proud of and you thought, wow, this was a moment where we really crossed a boundary here?
A few, if I'm honest. When we first launched and did the platform, we did the first ever on in-cloud payment, where our customers in the cloud, we're in the cloud, MasterCard were in the cloud. So that payment existed only in the cloud ecosystem. That was a big one. I think the launch of MetaMask on banks, where you're going end-to-end spending in the decentralized world, so on the blockchain, that was another huge one. I think for me, they're two of the standout ones that we've done over the last few years. And I think also stablecoin settlement. I think being the first on Visa and MasterCard to facilitate stablecoin settlement, for me, is a really, really big thing. To move money instantaneously via the card schemes to the merchants, I think is phenomenal.
How important is Monavate to the Web3 space?
I'd say we're intrinsically important. Today, if you're not already working directly with Monavate, it's most likely that the person you are working with is already powered by Monavate. So we think about our fintech customers and we think about our Web3 customers. Web3 is the future of fintech, but there's no Web3 without fintech, and Monavate puts the fintech in Web3. That's really how we think about it.
So why should we choose Monavate?
Ultimately, it boils down to trusting the people. Our people are experts. Trusting the technology. 99.99% uptime and more is always a necessity. Absolutely, you need to know you've got one provider globally, and we're the world's first to do that. And lastly, you want to understand the unit economics of your service, and we help you do that through automation of reporting and reconciliation.
Michael, Scott, an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.